Do you call the people that feature in your documentaries subjects, characters, or participants? Does it really matter? I'm here to tell you that yes, it does matter, and here is why.
I'm privileged and honored.
The vocabulary that we use to describe the people that are in our documentaries has a direct correlation with how we view them in our minds. If you think of them as a character, that creates a different frame of mind on how you treat them in your film than if you think of them as a participant or as a subject. If you think about them as a participant, you are making a film with them. I am trying to work with them to create the best film that we possibly can. My films focus on the main goals of the protagonists of the films. I want them to feel comfortable with how they're going to be portrayed. Having this trust helps you be able to go deeper into a story, to get more honest, truthful, and raw expressions. Have these conversations early in the process with your participants in the film. I would recommend before you even start filming, be honest with them. I want to make this film with you, not about you. This is a film that represents your point of view. Now, it's also important to make sure that you get your point of view across so they understand what your angle is coming from. But having these honest, frank discussions is going to help them trust you in the process more and help you create better work. Now, this doesn't mean that you're not going to run into issues further down the line, but this is where building that trust at the beginning of the process can help you solve those issues as you move further in your filmmaking process. Say, for example, there's a scene that you really want to include in the film that your main participant of the film doesn't necessarily like because they think it might paint them in a little bit of a bad light. Well, this is where that trust that you built early in the process can help you have these difficult conversations on why it's important to the overall story to keep it in, on why it's important that this side of their story is told. A lot of times, these imperfect moments in the film help the audience create empathy with the person that is present in the film, and you can explain this to your participant if you have that trust. For me, I have regular conversations with my film participants over what I'm thinking about themes, potential options, and ways we can go, or that I'm thinking about going, and I'm gathering their thoughts and their feedback on it so that way we can work on the process together. Now, I really don't like using the word subject. I come from a law enforcement background. I worked 10 years in law enforcement, and guess what we called people that we arrested? Subjects. I do not want to use that word to describe people in my film at all. Not even if I'm doing something where I'm interviewing somebody on the opposite side of the spectrum. I just feel it has a really negative connotation, and it's just a word that I really don't like. The word character, I feel that implies a fictional person. It's not a true representation of what is going on screen because documentary is about truth. Documentary is about what's taking place right now in real life. Character for me, I think it's just a word that is common in fiction, and I don't want to use that in my documentaries. You may have a different approach, that's completely fine, but for me, it just feels like the wrong word to use. I also feel that using the word character can imply a sense of power imbalance between the filmmaker and the people in the film. Character implies that you're able to manipulate their story to get across your viewpoint. And I don't believe that is right in documentary filmmaking. There's already an inherent power balance in filmmaking between the filmmaker and the participant, and we want to reduce that as much as possible rather than increase that. You saw that a lot in the past in documentary filmmaking, where predominantly white filmmakers went into communities that weren't theirs to share stories that weren't theirs to tell, and in a lot of cases, expose the participants of those communities rather than empower them. And this is a big shift in our way of thinking about documentary in the last couple of years, is that if you're doing a film, you want to empower the people in your film, not expose them. But what about Michael Moore style of films, you might say? Maybe subject is an appropriate word to use. I think that's just due to a lack of a better word. Once again, I don't know if character is the correct word because for somebody that just has a very brief role being interviewed by Michael Moore, say, I don't really think character applies. Character also tends to imply some sort of development throughout the film, and you typically don't see that with somebody just appearing on screen. Another example of this in film is 20 Days in Mariupol, which just won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Film. In this film, the main protagonists in the film are actually the filmmakers themselves, the journalists and the documentarians that are on the ground talking to people. The people that they interact with are not the main protagonists. They are just situated in a time and a place that the journalists are. So for them, you might consider them subjects or you might consider them characters. Maybe subject is the best word for that. I really don't know. Maybe they're participants as well. I think that's open for discussion. Another good example is the film Israelism by my friends at Tikkun Olam Productions. In this film, they interview Abe Foxman, the former leader of the Anti-Defamation League, to provide the counter perspective from the film's main protagonist, Simeon Zimmerman. I would argue that in this case, Abe acts as a subject and not as a participant in the film. He went into the interview not truly knowing what he was getting into, and he's explained this himself in certain interviews. I can share the link below. But in this case, he's definitely more of a subject. If you want to know more about this subject, I highly recommend watching the film Subject. This film breaks down what it actually feels like for participants of film to be on the other side and to watch themselves on screen, and the impact that documentary films play on their lives. This is, I believe, a must-watch for every documentary filmmaker, no matter what level you are at, so that you understand some of the potential consequences of documentary film, and so that you have a better understanding of how to approach filmmaking in a way that treats the people in your films with respect and dignity and empathy, and will help you get to the core of the story better. See you in the next one.